is the San Diego Sports Junkies, a show for fans by the fans, with Josh Taylor, Justin Smead, and Jason Eidsmoe. We're talking Padres, Chargers, and Aztec sports.
Got to hit it to the right place. And he hits it out to center. Right center. Blackman's got a long way to go. He's still going.
Off the wall.
And it is off the wall. It takes a funny hop. Kemp is rounding second. He's heading to third. And Matt Kemp into third base with a triple and the first cycle in the history of the San Diego Padres.
He will hand it off. Tomlinson plows his way towards the goal line. LaDainian Tomlinson, one step closer to football immortality. Tomlinson has tied the single-season record. And the handoff to Tomlinson. Left side, and he will gallop into the end zone. Charger fans are witnesses to history.
Pope thought about it. Now steps up. And the freshman hits the jumper at the buzzer.
Well, this kid is some prospect. Big time length, big time game.
Pope straight away three. He counted. Malik Pope. Pope off glass and good. On the other end, Joel doesn't miss that one. Shepard alley-oop to Pope. He got up there. Oh, wow.
It's time to let your voice be heard.
All right, it's Wednesday at 7 o'clock. That means it's time for the San Diego Sports Junkies, a show for the fans by the fans. I am Jason in the studio solo tonight, but a treat for everybody, of course. I have Josh Taylor on the line with me tonight. Josh, how's it going, man?
Back-to-back weeks that you are lying to the listeners, Jason.
Are you talking?
I wouldn't necessarily call it a treat. However, I do appreciate the common courtesy.
Well, we enjoy having you. It always, Hal was, he hasn't been on live the last few weeks, but he always listens to the podcast later on and tweets about it. And he said, whenever you're on with us, it always feels like the band's back together. We bring you on early, we bring Mikey on late, and it's just, everything's right in the world again when we have all of us on.
I have a hard time disagreeing with a lot of what Hal has to say.
Yeah, I do actually disagree with a lot of what Hal has to say, but I love the guy. He's awesome. We don't see eye to eye on a lot of things, except for the fact that we're both huge Charger fans, and we both have a lot of mutual respect for each other. Super Bowl.
The other thing I can agree on, Hal, is Arizona, we are both living here currently.
Right. So. That's right. You guys are living in Arizona. Both Charger fans.
I'm surprised he hasn't tried to take advantage of my Twitter handle and try to hang out and have a beer or something.
Yeah. Well, maybe, I don't know where Arizona, we think you're both in Arizona, so you must be next door to each other. You guys could be hundreds of miles apart. Who knows?
This is true, or he could be my next door neighbor who I never see.
That's true. So Super Bowl, we just got done with the Super Bowl. Of course, the Chargers weren't in it this year, which was a bummer for us Charger fans. Did you watch the game?
I did. Unfortunately, I wasn't happy about the outcome, but I did watch the game.
Yeah, people are like Cam Newton, don't like Cam Newton, whatever. I just can't. I can't root for the Broncos. I can't do it, man. And my direct boss at work is from Colorado. He's a big Denver fan. And I was thinking it'd probably be better for me if the Broncos win. And I still couldn't root for him. I just couldn't bring myself to root for him. I was bummed by the way that game went. And, it was surprising that they were not able to, that Carolina was not able to mount any sort of an offense against Denver.
Yeah, it's kind of frustrating. I mean, I think obviously their offense struggled. You can't say that they didn't. But I think, and there's been a lot of conspiracy about it, as there seems to always be after a Super Bowl, especially if Peyton Manning or Tom Brady are involved. But there just seemed like a lot of things that were questionable of how did that go against Carolina? Starting off from the challenge play, the very first challenge, the reception that you're listening to all the commentators, you listen to the ex-referee, the ex-head referee, and he's saying that this should be a catch, no question, and then they they ruled against, Cam Newton and the Panthers, and then later in the game, Cam Newton gets hit well after the ball was released. Should have been a 15-yard penalty, and, they don't throw the flag. So I feel like it was everybody. I think it was like Carolina against the world when it comes to the Super Bowl.
Couple good points. First thing I want to bring up was I was completely, as usual, I'm in the minority. I always am. My opinions are always in the minority, but I wanted Carolina to win, and I watched that play, and I thought, that's not a catch. That's what I thought. I thought
really?
When he went down, the tip of the ball hit the ground, touches the ground, even though his hand was under it, and the second that happened, he lost control of it. That tells me that it's not a catch. That was the first. I was looking at that thing. That might not be a catch. And then when Mike Carey came on and said that's definitely a catch, I said, well, then it can't be because that guy is always wrong. You talk about, you said, well, the ex-referee comes on. Yeah, but he is. If you've watched the CBS broadcast this season, he has been wrong a lot. It's comical how often he's been wrong. And then
I have a hard time disagreeing with that statement because you are absolutely right. He has been wrong quite a bit.
And then the second point you brought up is so funny because I was thinking about the same thing. When Cam Newton throws the ball away and he gets shoved well after the play in the end zone, and I'm thinking, if that's Tom Brady, that's a 15-yard penalty. I know it sounds like a whiner, and
right?
I hate Tom Brady, but it's true, man. If that was Tom Brady, that's a penalty, and that should be...
If that was Peyton Manning, that was a penalty.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you on both of those calls. Now, I don't think that it was I'm not the conspiracy guy. I don't think that it was the world against Carolina. I do think that one of those two plays that you just mentioned did go against them. But ultimately, Carolina, go ahead.
I was going to say they chose the wrong day to have their worst game.
The thing about Carolina to me is that is a team that doesn't know how to deal with adversity because they didn't have to deal with it all season long. They did not know what to do when things they weren't used to not everything going their way. And, everybody's mad at Cam Newton after the game, and I have a different perspective on that. I've never been a huge Cam Newton fan, to be honest with you. I think he's a really good player. He's way better than I thought. But when he's upset after they lost, and people say, oh, he's a poor sport, he's a sore loser and stuff. Don't you remember people complaining when their team loses and they see players on the sidelines laughing and joking, and you hear about them playing cards on the trip home and stuff? Wouldn't you rather your favorite player be pissed off and upset and angry that they lost? Wouldn't you rather that?
Totally. Absolutely, I would.
I see no problem with that. He's being interviewed directly after the game. He's pissed. He's upset. I have no problem.
Not only is he being interviewed after a game where they dominated all season long and then lost in the Super Bowl, but they had the media where they had Broncos players and Carolina players in the same room at the same time being interviewed, and you have Bronco players giving Cam Newton a bunch of shit while he's on the stage. It's frustrating enough to talk about a loss, but then when you got people ragging you from 5 feet away because they just won the Super Bowl, that's just insult to injury, in my opinion.
I'm not a huge fan of the big celebrations, and Cam Newton is not alone on this. It does seem that there's too many players that put a lot of work into celebrations, and I'm not a big fan of that, and I know people don't like Cam Newton for that. I'm not going to single him out. I'm not a big fan of anybody doing that. I'm just not. But I just disagree with everybody saying he needs to learn how to lose. No, he doesn't. He needs to be pissed off when he loses, and he needs to go up there surly, and he needs to say, look, I don't want to fucking talk about this. I'm pissed off that we lost and we should have won, and I don't have a problem with that at all. And
I don't either. I actually would rather that happen, like you said, in opposed to, them just, shrugging it off or goofing off or being happy because they're a multimillionaire. I want to see some fire and some passion in your leaders.
Exactly. That's a good point, too. Most of these guys, they go home and they're still millionaires. But for somebody like Cam Newton, he's really genuinely upset. And I have no problem with him being a quote-unquote sore loser. And the great thing about all this is we got Mikey Maciejewski in the chat room agreeing with me. It's nice to see old Mike back, because recent Mike doesn't agree with anything I say anymore. But old Mike, old Mike is on board agreeing with me, and I like it. I like it a lot. We got Justin in the chat room too, by the way, and his comment was the Panthers didn't show up, and I agree. They just, I don't know if it's that they didn't show up. It's just when things, if you remember, even the games that were close, the games were close because the Panthers jumped out to a gigantic lead, and then the other teams came back. The Panthers never really had adversity from the beginning, and I just think they didn't know how to handle it.
Yeah, I could agree with that, especially in the playoffs. I mean, as far as getting out to a big lead, it seemed like every game in the playoffs, the Panthers got out to this enormous lead. I mean, we're talking they're up 21-0 before, the first commercial break. And, when you have that much of a cushion, you can afford to make mistakes and still, 9 times out of 10 or 10 times out of 10 still win that football game. But like you said, they got down 10 still, in my opinion. And, everybody's entitled to it. I feel that catch was a big turning point because the next play, it's a sack fumble. It turns into a touchdown for the Denver defense. Now they're up 10. Now your back's against the wall really early, and that's difficult, I think, for anybody in the NFL. Unless your name is, Tom Brady, because those guys, they've been through every single war imaginable, and they know how to deal with that adversity. But Cam, this is his first time in the big spotlight.
Yeah.
And maybe it's a learning experience. Maybe they run the table next year. Who knows? But I think this ultimately will make Cam a better player and a better quarterback moving forward.
Yeah, another thing about that catch not catch thing, everybody's glossing over the fact that pass was thrown right into Cotchery's hands, and he bobbled it like he was a juggler, which a lot of the players on that team did. If that guy just catches the ball when it's thrown directly to him, we're not even having this conversation. And you're right. That was a huge turning point because I could be wrong, but right after that, isn't that when Cam fumbled it for and they ended up giving up the touchdown, I believe, was the very next play on that.
Right, that's what I just said.
Yeah, so
way to pay attention to me.
I was thinking about I pulled a Josh, and I was thinking about what I was going to say. Also, one problem with me being here by myself is I'm trying to follow the chat room also. So I did tune out for just a second. I do apologize to you.
Screw those guys in the chat room. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, the other thing that I wanted to point out, and this is going to be me doing something that I hate it when people do, and that's second guessing the play calling. But when you're dealing with a pass rush as fierce as that, a few screen passes to the running back, I think, could have made a big difference. Not this bullshit wide receiver screen that everybody's throwing. I'm talking about draw them pass rushers in and dump it to the running back, and I'm curious why they didn't do that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like you said, that's kind of like the Charger fan mentality. We're always talking about what they should have done and what they should have done, and ultimately players make plays, and the Panthers just didn't make the plays.
You're right, and you know what? That obviously if it was that obvious to me that they should be doing that, then there's probably a reason why they weren't. Ultimately there's got to be a reason why they're not doing that. By the way, the chat room, it's unanimous right now. They say, "Screw you, Arizona." Oh man,
I love it.
So, if that's really all I had to talk about the Super Bowl. I thought I'd get your thoughts and opinions on the Super Bowl. Not a whole lot has happened Padre-wise. The Chargers, we hired somebody to come in and be a special advisor, Fred Moss, and I don't know a whole lot about him. I'm going to bring Jake in later on. He's going to talk about him. Anything else that you want to, any other subjects that you wanted to talk about before we bring Jake on?
Well, I'm actually excited to hear Mikey call into the show, and Justin will probably have some tidbits to talk about as well. But
that Aztec game
have been playing extremely well since they've gone into conference. They're now 11-0. They play tonight at 9 o'clock. I think it's maybe 9 o'clock your time. But the Aztecs can have an opportunity to go to 12-0 and really run the table. If you look at the rest of their schedule, they have a good opportunity to run the table, go undefeated, and really supplant themselves back into March Madness, because there was a lot of questions in the non-conference schedule. You know, are the Aztecs going to be a March Madness team this year? And, you know, they're finally coming into their own and proving a lot of people wrong. And it doesn't matter how poorly you play, it's how you finish, in my opinion. How poorly you start, I should say. It's how you finish. And the Aztecs are definitely finishing, and they're putting this conference away really quick.
Yeah, I agree. I watched that last game, too. It was I had written that one off. I said, well, it looks like we're going to lose one. I was one of the guys that if I was at the game, well, I take that back because I wouldn't have been leaving. But I had pretty much written off the game as a loss. And then all of a sudden that weird turnover, that weird play where he was inbounds or out of bounds. And then Malik Pope, who hadn't scored all game long, although I did see a little bit of that athleticism that Mikey's talking about, you know, not like he was playing like an elite player. I know.
It feels that way, at least.
And then he just got the ball. He just kind of stood there for a second and then just fucking drilled that three-pointer. That was so exciting.
I'm so kicking myself I didn't record that game, and I've tried to ask everybody since if there's a way to still watch that game, and no one could give me a response I was hoping for. But Justin, I was talking to him after the fact, and he said, you know, other than the Aztecs coming back from, I think it was down like 16 or 19 or something to New Mexico a couple years ago, where they came back and won that game to win the conference, he said this was the next best game he's ever seen the Aztecs play in conference.
You know, Darren jumped into the chat room, and he says the game was a gift, right? And I'm going to say yes or no to that. Of course, they made a mistake when they were inbounding the ball and they stepped out of bounds. But to the Aztecs' credit, the reason why that mistake was made was because they were trying to do something kind of tricky, because the Aztecs had defended the inbound so well and they'd had a couple violations. So they were trying to do something tricky to get the ball in, and it didn't work out. So it was kind of a gift, but at the same time, the Aztecs kind of earned that gift. That's the way I look at it. You know, it happened because the Aztecs were playing so tight. So,
well, and if the Aztecs didn't do what they had to do on the offensive end, it wouldn't have mattered.
Right. And then
if you would have got that ball and Pope would have missed that three, we wouldn't even be having this conversation.
And then whether or not he was actually out of bounds or not, I guess when you slow it down, some people say that the wrong call was made, but it was one of those bang calls that could have gone either way. It just happened, you know. Lots of calls happen like that. It just happened to be at the end of the game. So, alrighty, Josh, I'm going to let you go. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to bring Jake on. I love talking to you at the beginning of our show every Wednesday, though. It's good to hear your voice. It's good to have you back, man.
Appreciate it, Jason. You take care. I know you love hearing your voice, so you're going to enjoy tonight's show.
Absolutely, man. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, buddy. Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So that was Josh Taylor gracing us with his presence on the show. It was awesome. I'm going to take a quick break. We're going to be coming back with Jake Hefner from ProFootballSpot.com. We're going to be talking some Chargers. Then we're going to bring Justin Smeed up on the phone. He's going to be talking whatever the heck Justin wants to talk about. Chargers, Padres, Aztecs. And then around 8 o'clock, Aztecs tip-off. We are still going to be graced with Michael Maciejewski, even though the Aztecs game is going to be going on. So he's going to be doing dual duty, watching the game and talking to us on the phone at 8 o'clock. Stick with us. On the other side of the break, we'll be right back.
Help with your business project that is due? Maybe you need business cards to help your business stand out. We at San Diego Sports Junkies got you covered. SK Digital Imaging can do it all. Give our buddy Sean K a call, 858-408-0732. SK Digital Imaging, From business cards to the bigger projects, SK Digital Imaging and our buddy Sean K will get your printing done right.
All right, we are back in black. Everybody knows what that music means, of course. That means it's time for Jake Hefner from ProFootballSpot.com. And right before I bring him in, I want to take just a quick second to quickly put something out there. A couple years ago, we had a really fun live show during the Chargers football draft. And what we'd like to do here at the San Diego Sports Junkies is we'd like to do one big giant draft show. And we like to invite the guys from the Lightning Round, Garrett Sisti and Jamie Hoyle, the guys from Bolt Talk Radio, Ray Chan and Lauren Casuto, and of course Jake Hefner if he is available to do one big giant live draft show. So we got a little bit of time to put that together and see what we can do. Jake, how's it going, man?
What you just said sounds like a Chargers fan wet dream right now. That's an awesome idea. I love it, and you can guarantee that I will be available for that draft show, no doubt about it.
We did a draft show a couple years ago when the Chargers drafted Jason Verrett, and we just set it up at my house. We just turned on the mics, and we just talked while we were watching the draft, and it was probably one of the funnest shows we did, and it was just the four of us. But we were thinking, and I gotta tweet Garrett and Jamie and Ray and Lauren. I think that if we all got together and just all sat around, and talked Chargers while we were doing the draft, it'd be tons of fun.
Yeah, I love the idea. I absolutely love it.
So hopefully we can get together. I don't know if any of them are listening tonight. I know some of them do listen to us occasionally, but I'll open it up. We can do it. We can try and set something up like that at Cali Comfort. I'm sure they'd be open to that. Somewhere of your choice, as long as we have internet access. We could always come to my place and do it. It doesn't matter to me, honestly. We just need to make that happen. So how's your week going?
It's going great. I was just going to say I still owe Garrett actually a beer.
Yes, you do.
Yes, so would love to get together for that. But yeah, Wednesday's doing good. It's always nice to get to come on here and talk to you guys.
Did you before we start talking Chargers, I had Josh on earlier and we were talking Super Bowl. Chargers weren't in the Super Bowl, but we're all football fans. We all watched the Super Bowl. Did you have any impressions from the Super Bowl?
To be honest with you, I mean, I wasn't that impressed, and not just for the fact that Denver ended up coming on top. Obviously, I was rooting for Carolina in that respect, but it's a defensive game, and defense wins championships. You have to really take that into account that is the truth. But when you see that neither starting quarterback throws a touchdown, I mean, it was. God, who would have thought that Peyton Manning would have had a worse performance in the Super Bowl than Brad Johnson of the 2002 Tampa Bay Buccaneers or Trent Dilfer of the 2000 Baltimore Ravens? It's just, you wouldn't have fathomed that. And then to see Cam just so off his game the way he was, it's just, it had all the markings for what could have been an explosive Super Bowl and a much more entertaining one, but unfortunately it just didn't deliver, and defense won the day on that respect.
When you talk about defense, one of the things that I really noticed when you watch the Denver defense, and of course they do have a lot of talent. They have more talent than the Chargers defense, top to bottom. But the one thing that they really do is they're I'm trying to think of the right word. They're target tackling. When they tackle, they are there to separate the player from the ball. But they, besides Aqib Talib and that stupid tackle, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But you see them making big hits, but not getting 15-yard penalties on the opposite side of that, you see the Chargers every once in a while making a big hit, and we always, anytime we make any sort of a big hit, always a 15-yard flag, and it's because Denver knows what they're doing. They're targeting the middle of the body. They're targeting the ball. They're not headhunting. They're not doing any of that stuff, and I think the Chargers could learn a lot from that.
Yeah, we've documented it on many occasions on this show as far as the lack thereof of tackling 101 with the Chargers. We've centered around Jaleel Aday's tackling ability and lack thereof, and just it always seems to have been a problem over the last couple of years with this team. So hopefully, anybody who's a coach that's out there can take what Denver does as a blueprint. You almost hate to say it because it is a rival team, but what Wade Phillips has brought to that defense is nothing short of what every defense in this league should mirror itself to be like, because you're absolutely right. Every single tackle that was being had, the Denver players were going for the strip. They were going for the ball. And ultimately they were able to create 3 turnovers throughout the game. And that was the difference maker in the Super Bowl. So when you look at that, and that's what they've been doing all year long, you have to really think about that in accordance of the players in your team and try to teach them that the best you can.
Yeah, and Darren brings up in the chat room that people are forgetting about the Panthers D too. It wasn't necessarily that Peyton Manning played so poorly just because he was out there playing poorly. The Panthers D had a lot to do with that, and they played extremely well. Basically, aside from that first drive by Denver, the Panthers D were out there playing well.
Oh yeah, I mean, I believe it was 7 or 8 drives where they consecutively held Denver without a first down. Really the only difference in the game was the strip fumble by Von Miller that turned into a touchdown at the end of the game when it was 16-10 when Cam got stripped by Von again, and ultimately was a turnover. But even the Denver couldn't even punch into the touchdown at that point. It was just, you put the game away, they ended up scoring, yes, but, you put the game away just at that point from making it a short field. But those were really the 2 biggest turning points in the game. But other than that, absolutely right. Carolina's defense actually played a decent game under the circumstances.
Yeah, another thing Darren says is, by far the 2 best defensive teams in an era of offensive football. That's pretty impressive for them to turn that into a defensive game. Now, speaking of defense, Aqib Talib, the thing is, I go back and forth because you want guys on your defense that play with an edge, maybe a little bit nasty. I think that the Chargers are missing that a little bit. But there's a difference between nasty and stupid. And Aqib Talib could have cost his team the game had he gotten kicked out of that game. And I'm going to ask you, I don't want to stand here on my high horse and make you stand on your high horse or anything, but when you see a guy grab a face mask and throw the guy out of bounds by the face mask, do you think that there was a case to be made for him to be ejected?
No. Was it worth the 15 yards? 100%. But that is not as bad as when you see, let's just take this for example. What was a more ejectable type of penalty? The face mask that Talib did, or when Corey Legit was on the ground against the Raiders and kicked, I believe it was Donald Penn, one of the guards that had him on the ground, literally kicked him while he was laying down on the ground, and he wasn't ejected. So when you look at it, it was probably be warranted that Corey Legit's penalty was probably worth the ejection in that circumstance. For a face mask, it kind of rivaled the whole Odell Beckham, Josh Gordon thing as far as the fight that was going on there, but it wasn't something that was continuous, and it wasn't something that was over the duration of the game and was getting out of hand. So I think the 15-yarder was definitely warranted for a bonehead play, because obviously Talib is no stranger to that, considering that he mastered the eye poke earlier on in the season. But not worth an ejection, but it would have been interesting, because now we hear rumblings about rule changes that are being implemented by Commissioner Goodell, that if you have 2 personal foul penalties that are called against you during a game, it will then warrant an ejection. And if those rules were so in place at this very point in time, then Talib would have been ejected for that game, because that was his second in just the very beginning of the first quarter. So it would have been interesting to see what would have happened if the rules were actually in place. But definitely, as the rules stand right now, I wouldn't think that would have been worth an ejection.
Now, I'm happy you brought that two personal fouls warrant an ejection. I actually kind of like that. I think that it gives the refs a little bit more control of the game, and it kind of makes players play within their control. The only thing that worries me is hits to the quarterback, because we see a lot of BS 15-yard unnecessary roughness penalties on quarterback hits that are not vicious at all. They just happen to maybe try and swat the ball and they tap him on the head or even on the shoulder. So I worry a little bit about a defensive lineman maybe getting ejected for touching a quarterback's head a couple times.
You're walking a fine line here with that type of a rule. You're almost making an excuse for the judgment call of the officials and giving like a safeguard for everything that happened in the Josh Gordon, Odell Beckham. Obviously.
I just lost his name too.
Josh Norman. Excuse me.
Yes.
The Josh Norman, Odell Beckham fiasco. The officiating was absolutely out of control in that game, and should have been that whole fight and war between those two should have been shut down way earlier than it actually was. And of course, nobody was ejected, but Odell Beckham was suspended for the next game. And I think that this, possible rule that's in place is almost in a way to give the officials a pass here. And I'm not sure that I completely agree with it, because you have to have these officials out there taking control of the game. As much as we want to criticize the officiating in the game now for ticky-tack calls and what have you, when it escalates to something like this, the officials have to have control. There's no way that they can let something like that escalate to what it did in that Giants and Panthers game. So I almost think that this is the league, in a way, trying to cover up for the bad officiating and to give them basically an out and make things more easier for them as far as their judgment calls, when they should be able to make these type of calls themselves. So I'm not so sure that I agree with the possibility of this ruling getting passed next year.
I almost think that maybe they should do something kind of similar to what they do in college, and basically, after the play is over, if it's something that could warrant an ejection, kind of send it up to replay and take it out of the ref's hands and say, look, this is what happened, and either this guy's ejected or not. I think that might be the way to go.
Well, one way or another, I think it still is in the official's responsibility to warrant what is an ejection, rather than having two personal fouls personally cause an ejection off of something, especially if it looks, because you can now call something as an official, as a personal foul, that may not be warranted, like you said.
Yeah.
Little hits on the quarterback that are nothing, and already one guy has one strike against him, and if he gets one more, he's already ejected. Yeah. It just leaves a lot to. I have a feeling that if this rule ultimately passes, that it's going to do more harm than good.
I agree. I think that there's going to be too many times where people who maybe don't warrant ejections get ejected. So that's interesting. And I see something in the chat room that I don't know if I've ever seen. That's somebody disagreeing with you, Jake. Darren says, couldn't disagree with Jake more. You're fucking around with the dude's neck and spine. I'll take a kick over that any day. And I actually think that's a pretty decent point. I think I'd rather be kicked in the groin than somebody grab my helmet and throw me out of bounds. Maybe I'll hang on a little bit with Darren.
Well, hang on. I mean, look, I'm not saying that there isn't any problem with what Aqib Talib did whatsoever. Yeah. I mean, blatant, yes. Penalty, yes. Fine and suspension, which it looks like it could be for the beginning of this year, absolutely. But as far as ejection goes, I mean, we've seen plenty of guys just, go for somebody's head and knock their helmets off and just get nothing.
Right.
And I'm not saying that no punishment that it should come to Talib whatsoever. But I'm just saying in the heat of the game at that point in time, I don't believe it was blatant enough to warrant an ejection. I understand what he's saying as far as the difference of a neck and a kick to the gut goes. Absolutely, there's no question about it. But when you look at the context of the game and the rules that are in place, I don't know how you could actually take that as a case and to warrant an ejection at that very moment in time.
Yeah, I do think that, you do have to watch out because, ejecting somebody at the beginning of a game could mean the difference between a win or a loss. So I think you do need to be careful about that. I think one of the things that just left a real bad taste in my mouth is the fact that, you keep calling it a 15-yard penalty, and it was actually like a 2-yard penalty because of where they were. So it seemed like he almost got away. There's times in a game where you could do that and the penalty is so minimal, that it's kind of like first and goal on the goal line. If you're a cornerback, you might as well be interfering with the wide receiver because it's not really costing you anything. And there are some penalties in the NFL that really just don't cost you anything. And so maybe that's one of the things that kind of rubbed me raw a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So moving on from the Super Bowl that the Chargers were not in this year. A couple things I want to talk about Chargers. First of all, Patrick Robinson is a free agent, and I thought he had a really, really solid year with the Chargers. Should they re-sign him, in your opinion, and will they re-sign him, in your opinion?
I think they should. I can't guarantee that they will, because we know that the Chargers obviously have a lot of free agents on the table. When you talk about a defensive backfield that is going to be going through a lot of changes this year from the leadership that you're going to be losing in Eric Weddle, you want to try and keep the core group of your defensive backs together, and especially the ones that were playing at a high level. And Patrick Robinson was definitely one of those. For stepping in the slot corner spot, that was a battle really from the preseason on between him and Stephen Williams. He took the job over right from the get-go and was a battler all year long, and considering, when you go back to the beginning of his career when he was drafted, only recently has he been able to show some really high marks. And, when the Chargers actually picked him up for the Saints, he was actually coming off of his best year. And he had another solid year with the Chargers, maybe not statistically wise that he had in New Orleans, but was able to be a really dependent and veteran presence in that defensive backfield. And I think, personally, you need to re-sign him and have some of that continuity back. And, the Chargers got him on a one-year deal. It wasn't that big of a price tag. Not really sure how much it's going to shoot up here in the next year when it comes around to March. But I think it's definitely one of the top priorities that Tom Telesco should be considering when bringing him back to the team.
I agree with you. I just do worry that he had a solid enough year last year that I'm wondering how high the price tag will be. So I agree with you. I just I do worry about the price. During the offseason so far, the Chargers have pretty much completely overhauled their coaching staff. They went 4-12. When you go 4-12, changes have to be made. You can't fire all the players. You have to make some moves. So they kept Pagano, they kept McCoy. 11 coaching position moves in the offseason. One of the ones that saddened me the most, we talked about it before, is Mike Nolan chose to leave. I wanted to get your overall impression of all those coaching staff moves, what it's going to do, or do you think we're a better coach team, or if we step back? And then also, Jerry Atauchu made such a huge leap from last year to this year, and I'm personally going to give a lot of credit to that for Mike Nolan. Do you worry that he might take a step back now that he's gone, or do you think that he's going to keep growing?
Well, it's going to be interesting. I think that is the one group to really highlight as you go in to this offseason, and see how is this linebacking crew going to react. We talked about it before. This is going to be this group's third linebackers coach in the last 3 years. And when you see what they were able to do under the tutelage of Mike Nolan as far as taking that next step, I think I was more impressed with what I saw out of Jerry Atauchu than I was out of Melvin Ingram, specifically because you look at the progression.
Yes.
And the quickness in which he did it, whereas the fact that Melvin's been here a little bit longer, and he finally had his best season as a Charger. I mean, they obviously collectively together they ended up as pretty well in the stats column. But Melvin really came on towards the end of the season, where Jerry, he may not have gotten all the sack statistics that you would have liked, but he was definitely there when it came to quarterback pressure. So I was very impressed with his growth. And now you really have to, take a step back and say, what are they going to do now that they have another linebackers coach now at the helm? Now, albeit, coming over from the Jaguars, and been a coach in this game for a long time now. He's a very physical type of guy. So hopefully he can have these guys coercing as a unit, and hopefully they won't be taking a step back next year, but a step forward instead.
Staying with the coaching staff, the Chargers hired ex-Notre Dame quarterback Tommy Rees. I think he's 23 years old as an offensive assistant. Is this something that they are bringing somebody in to get him some experience because they think that this is somebody that can really add to us in the future? Or do you think that he's going to bring something to the table this coming year?
This was an interesting hire, and I don't really know the type of impact that he is going to have as far as offense goes. Now when you couple everything with all the coaching changes that have happened along the offensive line, assistant offensive line, ultimately offensive coordinator, and Kevin Wisenhunt, what type of impact is this really going to have? But the one thing he does have is he does have familiarity with 3 current Chargers on the roster, in Manti Te'o, Chris Watt, and Trevor Robinson. One of those individuals might not be back next year, but at the same time, are you trying to find some continuity? I was actually thinking about it. If there is ultimately a shift along the offensive line where Chris Watt doesn't end up being your long-term center, which I think we can fully agree has already proved to not be the answer, could you maybe looking at Nick Martin as a center from Notre Dame currently that's coming up in this year's draft? Because he definitely has ties to all of these individuals during his playing tenure at Notre Dame. So it'll be interesting to see if that ends up becoming a type of strategy to where he would actually have some input along the offensive scheme. Certainly not along the defensive scheme, I wouldn't think, but at least around some of the offense. But again, it's way too early to tell to see if at all this will end up having any impact along the offensive line.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting point you brought up, that he might be able to lure some guys that he knows to come here and play. So that's an interesting thought. Now, I'm trying to see here. I got a lot of stuff I want to talk about. I want to make sure I kind of take it in a good order here. Before we start talking about stadium stuff here, I'm trying to remember Rick Haney. He wrote an article. He had talked to Ken Wisenhunt about fullbacks, which was interesting because you just wrote one about Chargers and their future at fullback too. I don't know if you had a chance to read it at all, but it was really interesting about how Ken Wisenhunt was kind of talking about almost, most teams don't have a real legit fullback anymore because with the way offenses are, you only really get your fullback on the field for about 15 plays, and if you got a guy that's a legit only a fullback, you almost don't want to risk one position on your roster for a guy that's only going to play 15 plays. What are your thoughts on that? I don't know if you read the article or not.
I did kind of skim over it a little bit, and I read some of his article or his comments when it came to the difference between a true fullback and the type of fullback that's in the game now. And in reality, I think both answers are right, because the Chargers, when you look at their scheme and I think about what it is they want to do, I think they can come to the conclusion that, hey, we need a guy who can block. And when you look at a lot of these fullback hybrids that come out that are a little bit bigger in their size and their blocking capabilities, they're not the old school fullback form of the guys who could get really low and block people out there. So in essence, it's both answers are right, because you want to have another possible option that you could go to as an outlet receiver for the quarterback to see if he needs somebody else that's open, and have some of these guys that have pass catching capabilities, not just straight out blockers and guys that pave the ways for the running back. But at the same time, you still need to find somebody who, in my opinion, is a blocker first and a receiver second when it comes to a fullback. And I think that's going to be a similar type of view that the Chargers are going to have to search for a tight end. Let's not forget, at the beginning of free agency last year, the Chargers were heavily targeting Virgil Green, who is the Denver Broncos tight end.
Yes.
And he's one of the best blocking tight ends in this league. And obviously they weren't able to snag him. Denver was able to re-sign him before he was able to hit the free agent market. But they almost kind of let their hand go at that point in time to see where it is that they were actually searching for improvement. So I think they've been searching for these extra blocking capabilities for some time now, and figuring out ways that they can improve in the scheme of making their running game better. So I think in reality, you're going to have to really take in the blocking capabilities of a fullback and kind of reach back and search for that quality first before you end up searching for the receiving tendencies that one of these guys could offer.
You know, it made me just think of something else too. You know, if the Chargers are able to find themselves a legit blocking fullback, does that mean that there's, you know, if they're really looking for a really good, legit blocking tight end, they basically have that already if they were to put David Johnson back to his natural position of tight end? Because none of us were happy with David Johnson at fullback. We just didn't think that worked out very well. But do you think that if they moved him back to being, like, you know, the main blocking tight end, do you think that they could have some success with that?
It's hard to say because David Johnson technically hasn't been back to that position in the last couple of years. You know, he was drafted, I believe it was, actually I can't remember if he was drafted at all, but he was picked up by the Steelers. You know, he was taken out of college in that respect, and he was their tight end. I don't know if they ever even got a chance to use him as fullback, but then he had a couple of injuries that unfortunately derailed his playing time with them, and then ultimately came over to the Chargers as more of an H-back type. Now, he did some blocking for Pittsburgh in the fullback set, yes, but you never really got a chance to see any of it, nor did you get a chance to see him really out there in that type of tight end scheme. So it'd be interesting to see for me because the whole aspect of he's just a tight end and not a fullback, could he be more of a blocking type? We really don't know. David Johnson on this team right now is the biggest question mark, I think, out of the 53-man roster.
I agree. It is going to be interesting to see which direction they move with him. You know, maybe this is just me being an old-time Charger fan. I would kind of want to get your opinion. Maybe take off your Charger hat for a minute. I can't do that, but I think you can. Step back for a second. The fact that Don Coryell is not in the Hall of Fame, I think is just an absolute crying shame. Why is he? Why is he not in the Hall of Fame? Do we love him more than he deserves to be loved? Do we think more of him than he? Do we give him more credit than he deserves? Or is this just a travesty that he's not in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, how long have we been waiting for this now? I mean, this is something that anybody with a Chargers hat or a non-Chargers hat should be able to see with their own two eyes. I mean, this was the implementation of the West Coast offense. I mean, this was Air Coryell back in the day. I mean, you know, long bomb down the field, acrobat. This is why you came to see the Chargers. This is a blueprint for what a lot of the offenses run today in the National Football League. I mean, you know, everybody wants to talk about the guys who pioneered this game in terms of the coaching realm. You know, you have, you know, your Bill Walshes, who almost took Don Coryell's system and perfected it in San Francisco. And did Bill Walsh help pioneer the offensive game? Yes, 100%, absolutely. But if there wouldn't be a Bill Walsh system if there was not a Don Coryell before that. And that's the long and the short of it, in my opinion. Don has done so much that has gone so underappreciated in this league, and it's amazing for the achievements that he has created in the modern day game of football that is still played today, that his name has not been able to resonate in the halls yet. Nothing against Coach Tony Dungy, because during his tenure, during his time, he was a great head coach. But do I think that he warranted a vote over Don Coryell?
No way.
Absolutely not.
No way.
Absolutely not. So, you know, we're waiting patiently, and, you know, obviously we'll rejoice in the day where it finally comes, but the fact that it has not happened up to this point is a big question mark.
You know, you say we'll rejoice and stuff, but I think that when it eventually does happen, I'm almost going to be a little bit mad about it, like that it took so long. when it finally happens. Don Coryell changed the game. Tony Dungy, like you said, he's a really good coach, a really nice guy, a really good guy. He didn't do anything to change the game, though. Don Coryell changed the game, and the fact that he is, the fact that he's not in the Hall of Fame is just it just boggles my mind. We're gonna, we always have to talk about where the Chargers are going to be moving to, or whether or not they're moving, and all that stuff. Unfortunately, that just kind of squeaks into the conversation each week. Roger Goodell came out and said it's the NFL's priority to keep San Diego in San Diego and Oakland in Oakland. Do you believe that that's true? Do you think the NFL really cares whether or not the teams stay in their cities, or is that just rhetoric that he's spitting out?
I legitimately believe him. I really do. I don't think that there was any point for Goodell to really come out and say it. I think that his comments that had been made, had already been apropos and appropriate when San Diego ultimately decided to stay, and he had talked about the funds that were going to be distributed from the league to help them out in getting a new stadium. But you hear him come out again and hear him say this. It just pads the situation of what's being able to be at hand here. And obviously, none of us can speak for Oakland's situation at this time. But, when you see everything that has changed here just in the last couple of weeks with the comments that Goodell's made and the public appearances that have been presented by Dean Spanos, it's just, it's really amazing what a year can do.
Yeah.
And when you have a situation like this where Dean has become so much more public in the view, and you hear these comments that are made from the league when, a couple months ago when Kevin Acee asked Goodell a direct question saying that there's not a viable plan in them staying, and it just sounds like everything is going to be so negative and that the Chargers are ultimately going to be moving to Los Angeles. It's completely the opposite. And all signs are pointing towards the Chargers, at least at this point in time. Obviously, a lot more work to do, but it sounds like both, obviously, Dean Spanos and the NFL themselves, as far as the rest of the owners in this league, and a lot of people want the Chargers to stay in San Diego.
Yeah, a lot of people out there hate Goodell. I don't personally. He's an easy guy for people to hate. But I kind of think I agree with you too. I think that I do think that he wants the Chargers to stay in San Diego, and I hope that that's the case. I hope he's just not saying it. I hope it's just not rhetoric. Along that lines, you said Dean Spanos is becoming more. He's becoming more public. He appointed Fred Moss as a special advisor. That was big news here in San Diego, and I'm going to be honest with you, the first thing I thought was, who the hell is Fred Moss? Please enlighten us what this means, if it means anything specific to the people that are listening.
Well, I think everybody kind of looked at Fred Moss now and seen only good things connected to his name. And that's absolutely true in this respect because of the fact of the circles that Fred Moss runs in, not only with Mayor Kevin Faulconer, not only with Dean Spanos, but with the city community and the construction of certain building sites that he himself has had a forefront and a hand in. And for the fact of, obviously his job is, he's founder and CEO of Pacific Eagle Companies, and that specializes in investment and development of sustainable buildings communities in the local area. And there was actually an article, I'm not sure if you remember, that Kevin Acee had came out and publicized one, I believe was in July of last year, saying that this individual, Fred Moss, would be the man to ultimately bring these two parties together and make something work. Didn't matter if it was in downtown or Mission Valley, but ultimately when Mayor Faulconer went to him earlier last year, which had happened, he had declined because he didn't feel that the mayor's office this was over a longer period of time. He was actually the reason when he declined. This was the reason that set in stone the city council and the target group to be formed, which ultimately brought up the whole Mission Valley plan for San Diego. But he was an initial catalyst piece that the mayor wanted to have, and he did not feel at that time that the mayor was truly serious about their initiative to build a stadium in San Diego. And the reason for that is because he had a history with former San Diego Mayor Jerry Richardson. And of course, through all those trials and tribulations of how everything went down with that, he probably had a firsthand in knowing how much the city actually really at that time did want to bring a stadium into San Diego. So the fact that he has now been brought to the table, and the fact that he has been brought to the table by Dean Spanos and taking over Mark Fabiani's role, even though Mark Fabiani is said to still be in workings and intricate piece of this whole negotiation process, is something that is huge, because now you have a middleman that can work both sides and ultimately bring it just what it needs in terms of a negotiation piece, and something that not only this Chargers, not only the city council, but ultimately the city is going to be able to profit as a group. So it's a great, great move, in my opinion, by Dean Spanos and bringing Fred Moss on.
Now, with when he was first hired, a lot of people were saying something about, they, like I said, I didn't know a whole lot about him. I didn't read a whole lot about him. And you mentioned, Mission Valley downtown. Does this does the bringing him on tell us that, this now it looks like they're going to be shooting for a downtown stadium, or now it looks like they're going to be shooting for a Qualcomm stadium, or does it not really mean anything towards either one of those things?
I don't think from what he has said in his comments that it necessarily means downtown, but I think we can all safely assume that if we're going to come to any agreement, because I think we know how Dean Spanos has operated in the last year and a half to know what it is that he really wants. And while he's even come out publicly recently and said that both options are still on the table, if that is the case, then obviously we'll be shocked to hear that when the ruling obviously comes out for the site that they've chosen. But I think we know Dean well enough to know now what he truly wants, and that's downtown. And I personally think that should be the location that's going to work the best in this type of situation. Obviously neither party from either the Chargers or the city is going to be able to get exactly what it is that they want. But if you can negotiate it in a way where it's going to work both financially and both well for the city, obviously you have to throw in the hoteliers in that type of situation, it ultimately is the right place to do it. And then, of course, during that duration when it's constructed, you could still be using Qualcomm, so you don't have to find yourself another location nor another location for San Diego State in that regard.
Right.
But we don't truly know what his hiring means as far as location goes. But I think you'd have to lean towards downtown into some respect with him coming on.
Now that we have had this big shift now, and it looks like Dean's going to do everything he can to keep the Chargers in San Diego, do you believe that the deal he's going to try and make he's going to just try and get the best deal possible? Or do you think that he really does truly want to try and find some common ground where it's good for the city as well as good for the Chargers?
I think that's it. But I think it's a combination of the two. I think there has to be a common ground that's good for both the city and the Chargers. But on top of that, it's going to be the best deal is going to be the common deal. And it's going to be one that's going to ultimately work for everybody. I think in Dean's mind right now, that is the best deal, is one that can be common. So I think from the intentions and the interviews that he's obviously put forth to the public, I think that's truly what he wants. And then when you hear what Mayor Kevin Faulkner has come out to say, it seems like his intentions are exactly the same. So hopefully, ultimately, when it comes to a ruling on this, you're going to find a great presentation that's going to be able to come forward and something that the voters are going to be able to really see as a benefit when they go to the ballots in November.
Well, awesome. I appreciate you you bringing in and talking to us about Fred Moss, because, like I said, I didn't know a whole lot about him. I don't know how much our listeners knew about him, so I'm really happy that you had a lot of information about him. Before I let you go, any other, Phillip Rivers' salary was fully guaranteed, I think, today, since he is still on the roster today. No surprise at all, of course. Any other points that I failed to bring up that you wanted to bring up this week?
No, man, this is your guys' show, dude. I just come on to contribute and talk football with you guys, but, you guys bring the content.
I appreciate it, man, and I love everything you brought. I love most of the things you had to say. I like I said, although I think that I did kind of misunderstand your comparing of Aqib Talib to Corey Legit. I wanted to
hang on a second. Jason, one thing you have to understand, dude.
Yeah.
As big as a Charger fanatic as I am, as much as I love coming on this show with you, and as much as I love interacting with the fans, there is no obligation or no expectation from myself at all that you have to agree with me. This is a friendly debate as far as I'm concerned, sir. So there's no harm, no shame in disagreeing with me. I would actually like it more.
Yeah.
If that was the case. It would make for good talk, and I love debating football just in general. So I have no problem with that whatsoever. So please, I know you being the positive Peter attitude that you normally are, bring some of that negativity out, man. Come on, this is open forum. You like you said, for the fans, by the fans. State your claim.
I need to find my more negativity. I do, because I need to I need to find more stuff to complain about. But as you can see that you've been with us for a few years now, you understand that mostly my opinions are in the minority. Most people, when we're all in here, they're pretty much ganging up on me the whole time. So, but we appreciate you coming in. We look forward to next week. A little programming note: March 2nd, a few weeks away. We will be off that day. We have a scheduling conflict. So I'll remind you as we get closer. But March 2nd, Wednesday, we will not be doing a show, and I look forward to trying to do that draft show. I'm going to try and get together with the Lightning Round guys and with the Bolt Talk guys, and of course we'll have. If you happen to be down in town, we'd love to have you on board. If not, we'll have the phone line going, because we'd love to have you be part of that.
I was just looking at the calendar in March. Correct me if I'm wrong, but does March 9th signify the beginning of free agency?
Ooh, you know what? I don't know. We'll have to look that up.
If it does, that would mean that you guys would be coming back on the air that night, and that would signify for a hell of a show.
Yeah, we'd have a whole lot of stuff to talk about, that's for sure. And that is one thing that we didn't get to tonight, although we got plenty of time, is people are starting to get released, so it would be interesting, and maybe we'll talk next week about Chargers, people that have been released by other teams that might be good fits for the Chargers. You don't always have to make that big giant splash in free agency. Danny Woodhead was not a really big giant splash. He was just a guy that we brought in, and look at what kind of a player he's been for us. There's a lot of players out there that you can fit onto your team that can make a huge difference.
Yes, indeed. And I just double-checked myself, actually. It does look like, let's see. Second. Yep, March 9th, 2016 league year officially begins, and I only remember that now because that was the date that Johnny Manziel will be released from the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, that's why that date stuck in my head, and it should have been on there anyways. But yes, so March 9th. So I'll definitely be looking forward to that show, because 4 p.m. Eastern on that day is when free agency will kick off, so I'm sure we'll have lots to cover on that night.
And the fact that the Wednesday before we won't be having a show, so we'll have 2 weeks worth of pent-up energy and aggression, and then free agency on top of that. We might have a 5-hour show that night. I look forward to it, man.
Definitely, same here.
All right, Jake, thanks a lot for coming on here. We look forward to future articles. Of course, people can check them out on profootballspot.com. Thanks for everything that you bring, and we look forward to talking to you next week, man.
Sounds like a plan, Jason. Have a good one.
All right, you too, man. So that was Jake Hefner from profootballspot.com, educating us on the bringing on of Fred Moss and other things, other things Chargers related, like he always does. We're the fans. He's kind of like the expert. He's the one that, we just talk about stuff like that people would talk about in a bar. Jake comes on and actually tells us, well, this is why, this is where this guy comes from and stuff. He brings so much to the table. We love having him in there. Michael Maciejewski, I hope that you're listening right now. If not, I'm going to message you here right now, but it is time for you to call in. We're going to be talking about some Aztecs on the other side of this break. We're going to be talking about the last win. We're going to talk about where they're going, how far out of the top 25 they are, and all sorts of stuff like that about San Diego State Aztecs on the other side of the break. We'll be right back.
Come forth, bear witness. See the prophet from your loss, beg for forgiveness. Only after you tell me the call.
Do you need help with your business project that is due? Maybe you need business cards to help your business stand out. We at San Diego Sports Junkies got you covered. SK Digital Imaging can do it all. Give our buddy Sean K a call, 858-408-0732. SK Digital Imaging. From business cards to the bigger projects, SK Digital Imaging and our buddy Sean K will get your printing done right.
Cali Comfort Barbecue in Spring Valley was built for West Coast Sunday morning football and fight night. Cali Comfort Barbecue has quickly become San Diego's slow smoke barbecue sports entertainment destination. Full service catering available for all your tailgating needs. CaliComfortSD.com.
Now everybody, have you heard? If you're in the game, well, then the stroke's the word. Don't take no rhythm, don't take no style. Got a thirst for killing, take your body.
All right, we're back. You can tell this is not Mike Maciejewski's usual music, and that's because I don't happen to have that on my computer. Usually we play Welcome to the Jungle. I don't have that on here, so you're going to have to listen to Billy Squire singing about the stroke. Mikey, what's up, man?
Well, Jason, how's it going?
Doing great. Aztecs, undefeated, it sounds like a broken record. Every Wednesday we talk about it, undefeated in conference play. That last game was a nail-biter. Your thoughts on that last game, on that last victory?
Oh, my goodness. I mean, like you said, a nail-biter. I was listening to you earlier about how you pretty much were about to chalk it up as a loss, and I'm with you, man. I was like, well, I guess the streaks have to come to an end sometime, and thankfully it did not. So, I mean, great comeback, great game. The Aztecs did what they did. They grinded it. They grinded with New Mexico, and they just pulled out the victory at the end there.
We talked about it during the first segment, but I want to talk about it with you. First of all, I don't listen to too much talk radio during the week, so what ultimately when we were watching the game, the announcers basically said you have to establish yourself out of bounds before you catch the ball. And then after the game was over, people went back and forth. So if we take the exact rule the way it is and we look at that play in slow motion, did the Aztecs did they get a break? Did they get a call that went their way? Or was the absolutely correct call made?
Well, looking at it first glance, I would say the Aztecs got a break. The thing is that I read Mark Ziegler's article, and he mentions that I guess the New Mexico player's shoe is black and the floor is black. So it's really hard to tell when his foot really touches the ground. I haven't gone back and looked at it because I haven't really searched for the video. But I mean, my first instinct is that the Aztecs had a break, a very lucky break.
Yeah, and it was at a perfectly opportune time. But let's not forget The reason why New Mexico was trying that is because the Aztecs were playing such strong defense guarding the inbound pass that New Mexico had to try and do some trickery to try and get that ball in, and it was probably a play that, my guess is it's not like they never practice it, but it's not the norm either. And that happened because of the Aztecs. It wasn't just a gift. It wasn't just they screwed up and the Aztecs ended up getting a lucky break. I think the Aztecs, you earned some of those things, and I think that they legitimately earned that. And I'm not the guy sitting here with I love the Aztecs, but I'm not like a lover of the Aztecs like where you have a hard time seeing the other side. But my guess is you agree with me on that, right? They earned that break, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it was a good break, and like people were saying, you can go back in this whole game just because it happened at the end of the game.
Right.
Kind of makes it stand out more. But you earn your breaks, and I mean, what's that saying about hard work and preparation creates opportunity or something like that?
Something like that.
and something like that. And the Aztecs do that. They prepared, they worked hard, and they created that break. So, I mean, obviously a great break. But again, like was mentioned earlier, if Malik Pope doesn't hit that three-pointer, we're not talking about it.
Yeah.
If the Aztecs lose in overtime, we're not talking about it, as much as we are now. Like, there's still things that had to happen afterwards. It wasn't like they scored 1 second with the end, at the buzzer and the game ended right then and there. There were still things that needed to occur.
That's what Justin keeps saying in the chat room too, and he's totally right. They still came out, and all that meant was they had an opportunity to tie it down 3. Is all that meant. They still tied it from 3 points down, and then they went into overtime and they took that game and they won that game in overtime. So they deserve a little. The game was not handed to them on that last play. They still had to earn it.
Correct.
Malik Pope, I know that you've been such a huge fan of his, and I know you're a touch disappointed where he is right now. We talk about him every week, but you see the good in him. I'm going to be honest with you, Mike. I saw, for a guy who had scored 0 points up until that fantastic 3-pointer, I saw a guy that looked pretty athletic out there. I saw some huge athletic rebounds. I saw some, maybe some stuff wasn't falling for him, but I saw not enough to look at him and go, oh, that guy's a no doubt NBA superstar. I didn't see that. But I did see a guy that, boy, he looks like he has, you can see the athleticism in that guy on some of his rebounds, on some of the drives to the hoop, on some of his defensive play. I actually saw a little bit of what you see in Malik Pope. But, man, he's got to get that consistency down, and he's got to show up for these games, even though that 3-pointer was such a huge 3-pointer. He can't have games where he only made, the only points he scores is in the last shot of the game.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's funny you mention it. You talk about the drives and stuff, and that's, I think, the part that's most amazing is because, remember, he's 6'10", so you don't expect a 6'10" guy to dribble the ball like that. Yeah. So, I mean, maybe a little more consistency, and we'll see what we're all thinking here, what people that scouts are seeing. But I mean, like you said, it's sometimes it's not apparent, and we've talked about this. I mean, of all the players that to me were given the least amount of effort, he was the one that gave the least when he was in there, and hopefully, we see some of that. And one thing that gets lost is I talked with Justin after the game was. The play before the 3-pointer, Dylan Cheatham has a rebound land right in his hands, and it slips out of his hands, and it goes right to New Mexico, and that's why they got the 3-pointer. And it was like, when Pope was in there in overtime, you saw him like he can one-hand some of those rebounds,
Yeah.
So it was a lot more sure-handed than he gets credit for sometimes.
Yeah, and everybody knows that I pull a little bit for Chol. He's my favorite player on the team. He sure looked good at the beginning of the game. I'm really happy with what I've seen from him so far this season. Are you? What are your thoughts on him so far this season?
Oh yeah, I mean, in the first half, Chol pretty much was who kept the Aztecs in there. I mean, literally they couldn't do much without him. There was a long stretch for Trey Kell and Jeremy Hemsley, and pretty much everybody wasn't scoring, and Angelo Cho was doing it all. So, he was huge at that point. And he doesn't get a lot of minutes. He gets some foul trouble sometimes. Spencer's defense obviously is at an elite level. So he doesn't see some moments, but when he's in there, I mean, he's hustling a lot more, because there were times when he wasn't hustling, and now you see a lot more of that from him.
And is Shrigley ever going to make a three-pointer this season, for crying out loud? And they keep saying just one of them has to fall. Just one of them has to fall. Well, none of them are falling, and he wasn't even missing close. The ones that I saw. Do you think that it's a problem? You talk about shooting there's so much involved, and a lot of it is lower body, and he came back so fast from that knee injury. Are we worried that he maybe came back a little bit too fast?
I mean, like you said, shooting comes a lot from your knees. So, that's a big issue when you tear your ACL. But, I know you said you haven't seen many of them go close, but trust me, there's been like at least 3 where they're like halfway in, halfway out.
Yeah.
So, they're there. They're coming there. One of them has to fall, because there's some that hits both sides of the rim and then it pops back out. I can't see this guy getting closer.
He had some pretty wide open ones too. I thought, he's draining this one for sure. Justin in the chat room, he says the Aztecs are too long and athletic for this whole conference, and their bench is too deep. And you know what? I agree with him, but I'm also a little bit worried, because we are running through this conference. We might go undefeated. We might not. But the problem is, let's be honest, there are some really good teams in this conference, but there are some also teams that we are much better than. And what worries me is we get through all these teams, we end up winning all these games, we make the tournament, and then all of a sudden the competition steps up a little bit. Is that maybe to our detriment, the fact that we aren't playing? It's obviously that we're the best team in the conference. That's obvious. I don't think anybody can argue against that. But you hear the term iron sharpens iron, and they use that a lot in fighting and that type of stuff. But ultimately, you're going to get better when you're playing better teams. And the fact that we are the best team in this conference, does that worry you a little bit, that we might not be getting challenged as much as we will in the tournament?
Not at all. You can only control who you play. You can't control who you play. And, regardless, these games have been close. It's not like we're blowing out everybody.
Right.
So they're still doing, what they need to do here. And they're still, dominating.
Right.
Dominating. And you can't ask them more than that. And, the one thing is, we need to just take care of this conference to get that invite to the Mountain West tournament. Not Mountain West, the NCAA tournament. Once that happens, then then you don't have to worry about the Mountain West tournament. You don't have to worry about all that other stuff. So just get through the Mountain West, win the regular season title, get enough wins so that you have an automatic bid, and then we'll worry about that. Expectations have always been for us Elite Eight. Mm-hmm. With this team, maybe expectations are, a win in the tournament now. As a program, obviously, Elite Eight still where we want to go. But, you just got to take this and get into the tournament. That's the biggest goal right now. Not anything else, but getting in. That's what you need.
Well, there are two sides to it, because no matter how good or bad teams are in your conference, teams in your conference are always going to play you better. That's just the way it is. It's like that in every sport, Every year the Chargers play the Raiders. The Raiders stunk, but they always played us tight. The only thing that does concern me, though, and so the conference teams are going to play you tough. I get that, but I am concerned that when we make the tournament, I do believe we will, the very first team that we play, no matter where we're ranked, the very first team we play will be the best team that we've probably faced in months, and that does scare me. That does scare me a little bit.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So
no, I mean that's a very fair assessment, and like you said, it's having that challenge, but if you know the Aztecs, like I said, they've been keeping it close with these bad teams, and it's really it's a testament to that in basketball more than any sport. You play down to the level of your competition,
right?
And so if they can play up to the competition, then that'd be perfect for the Aztecs.
Well, the thing is with the Aztecs, with the way their defense is, you always need to, you need to have a little bit, you need to be really good, and you need to have a little bit of luck. And when it gets to the tournament time, if they can somehow get hot shooting the ball, and hot for the Aztecs, we'd take 50%, We're not looking for them to go out there and, shoot 65% from the floor. But if they can start shooting 50%, that to me would be hot shooting for the Aztecs. We got a chance to go really deep in this tournament because their defense is good, and like Justin in the chat room says, they're playing, together like a team. They're doing the best at that than he's seen in a long time. So that tells me they got a really good chance. But like I said, I just worry that the very first team they play, no matter where they're ranked, is going to be the best team that they've faced in a few months.
Yeah. No, I mean it could very well could be, and it's just a disappointment to see New Mexico and Boise State drop these games. But again, it's a testament to the league, Any given day, anybody can beat anybody because, like you said, with the Raiders and just in-conference games, the familiarity breeds content, and familiarity, makes it so these games aren't, people play for pride. They're not just blowing by and looking past them. So, and as Coach Fisher said for a while now, San Diego State's, the hunted, and everybody brings up their best game, and today Fresno State has a whiteout. Everybody has a color out against San Diego State, So it'll be interesting if they win the tournament, which I don't want to say when until it happens, but I mean take care of business and they should be fine. Getting there, and then from there, it's one game. It can go any way.
That's a great point that you just made. Is the fact that every conference game that we play, whatever team we're playing, that is their biggest game of the year, and that's tough to every single night, to get up for. I understand that it's that they're I don't want to say they're professionals because they're not, but they're basketball players. But still, to be able to get that other team's best every single night. It's tough for you to be at your best every single night. So I get all that. And I just, like I said, I do just worry. So tell us about the game tonight.
Well, the game tonight, 8-7. Fresno State's leading with Trey Cal coming to shoot a free throw after an and-one make. I mean, Fresno State is going to be playing a lot of small ball. Their top two rebounders, I believe, and second and third leading scorer are out for today's game. So the Aztecs really need to take it down low and just pound the glass. And I mean, it should be. I mean, it's a big game because against Fresno State beat San Diego State last year, was it, to end the 47-game streak against California teams.
Yep.
And so it's a big game, and like I said, the opportunity's there with Fresno State having their big men hurt, and like I said, hopefully the Aztecs can take advantage. Obviously the defense needs to be there. Offensively, we need to score, and just be aggressive and get some points in there.
You mentioned the winning against teams in California streak. They have this ridiculous streak with winning games after leading at the 5-minute mark, which they almost lost in their last game. Is that one of those things that to you is just is that significant? Do you think that's a significant streak, or is that just something that people like to talk about?
I think it's significant in that you have to win to get it, and it coming back and coming back and not not giving up a victory when you're leading at that time with 5 minutes left, that's huge because, there's so many teams that wilt under pressure, and the way basketball goes, free throws, a free throw contest towards the end, and teams get tight, and the Aztecs don't. And big point is made of Coach Fisher when the game was starting to overtime. He was very calm and ready to keep playing. And you see, what's his name, Craig Neal from New Mexico going nuts when the call didn't go his way.
Right.
Those are perfect examples of two different types of coaches, two different types of mentalities, and you really take the not the example, but the lead from your coach, and if a team is scared, and if a team is tentative, then that's going to go ahead and trickle down to the players.
Are you there, Mikey?
Hello?
Oh, there you go. There we lost you there for a second.
Okay.
No, I agree, and I think that we're so lucky. First of all, we say this all the time, and you know what? The thing is, we can't say it enough. We're lucky that Steve Fisher is here coaching San Diego State. We're lucky for what he's done to turn the program around. But you're right that he's been there, he's done that, he understands, and for him to maintain his cool helps the players maintain their cool, and I think that's a huge deal for him. How can you tell your players to keep their composure out there on the field or out there on the court if you're standing on the sidelines running up technicals? I think that's so huge, and it's just so great what he's done for this team, and we talk about it all the time, but we talk about it too much, and yet we still don't talk about it enough because he's meant so much to this program.
He has, and like I said, if you've ever met Coach Fisher, he's a great person to talk to, and be around, and the areas that you worry about with him, like that coach that's unapproachable, and that coach that's demanding or authoritarian. He really is a teacher. He's a teacher, a teacher by profession and a teacher by action, and that's really who he is. So you really see that in this team.
Yeah, when we disconnected there, or when it sounded like we disconnected there a couple seconds ago, Justin thought maybe someone had shot you with a blow dart.
Yeah, no, I know. I saw. I tried to not laugh.
That's funny.
Yeah,
you know what?
Good.
I am going to let you go. I know that I appreciate you coming on because I know the Aztecs game is on right now, so you're trying to watch it. But before you go, tell everybody, of course, again about your website and any future articles or anything that they should be looking for right now on the website.
Yeah, AztecHoopsNation.com. The articles are starting to pile up here. I got a couple recently. I went to scout Leonard Allen Jr. I kind of mentioned that last week. Talked about the 2016 recruiting, and then I also just recently talked to Jordan Shakel, who's a junior in high school, who recently got an Aztec scholarship offer last week. So that's the newest one. If you're interested in recruiting, definitely check out my work there. If you're interested in Aztec stuff, you can check my work out on mountainwestconnection.com as well. So, and if now you want to hear me, I'm right here with you guys every Wednesday.
Absolutely, every Wednesday around 8 o'clock. We appreciate what you're bringing to Aztec fans out there. I appreciate, of course, what you bring to the show. Everybody check him out. You can follow him on Twitter, Mikey_AHN. Check out Aztecs Hoops Nation. Once again, Mikey, thanks a lot. We appreciate everything you do, and we look forward to talking to you next Wednesday.
Thanks, Jason. I look forward to talking to you guys, too.
All right, man. Go Aztecs.
All right, man.
All right, of course, Mike Maciejewski, huge part of the show. As a matter of fact, when we do the outro at the end, we still happen to have him in there, which is fine because he's part of the family. We talked about a lot of stuff tonight, guys. We talked a lot of football. We talked about the Super Bowl. We had some interesting thoughts on Aqib Talib and what Denver's defense does that the Chargers can't quite do. We talked a lot of stuff about the Fred Moss coming in, but before I let you go, I want to once again, if any of the guys from the Lightning Round podcast or Bolt Talk podcast are listening, Garrett Sisti, Jamie Hoyle, Ray Chan, Lauren Casuto, I want to invite you to join the San Diego Sports Junkies on draft night. Jake Hefner already said that he'll be part of it, whether in person or over the phone. I would love to do a combined podcast between the three largest San Diego Charger or San Diego sports podcasts in San Diego. I've done plenty of research, and that's a fact. Lightning Round podcast, Bolt Talk podcast, and of course the San Diego Sports Junkies. Let us all get together. Let's do a joint podcast during the draft. Like I said, we did a live podcast 2 drafts ago. It was a lot of fun. So I would like to invite you guys to be part of that. I'll be trying to get together with you guys on Twitter this week to see if you guys are interested, if you're not listening. Other than that, I think that's really all that I have this week. It's been fun once again. Justin has been in the chat room. He's got a new addition to his family, a 4-legged addition, and sometimes he's not able to get into the studio, but that doesn't mean that he's not contributing. Of course, anybody in the chat room can read what he's saying. He's always part of the show. He'll probably be back in studio next week. We'll have much more Charger stuff to talk about. I want to get into people who have been released by other teams who might be strong fits for the Chargers. We didn't talk any Padres tonight. Fernando Rodney tweaked a hamstring. Really, that's the only real news that happened in a Caribbean League game. He happened to pitch 3 innings that game, and I think he gave up 4 runs or something like that. So that worries me a little bit. But wasn't a whole lot of Padres stuff to talk about this week. So next week, hopefully, we have more Padres stuff to talk about. We love talking Padres. Of course, Aztecs. Hopefully, they continue their streak. It'd be interesting to talk about all the different scenarios for the draft for the Chargers. Other than that, I think I'm going to go ahead and sign off, let everybody go. San Diego Sports Junkies, a show for the fans, by the fans. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the San Diego Sports Junkies, a show for fans by the fans. Brought to you by Cali Comfort, home of the low and slow barbecue, and SK Digital Imaging with Josh Taylor, Justin Smead, Jason Eidsmoe, and Mike Maciejewski. Subscribe to us on iHeartRadio, on Spreaker, and on iTunes. Visit SanDiegoSportsJunkies.com for all your Chargers, Padres, and Aztecs news.